Yo, what's up everyone? It's your lawyer, Godot, and I'm happy to announce that the GER arc is finally over. This was originally going to be the Reddit section, but I decided to remove that entirely because it simply isn't worth it. As lately, I've had sort of an epiphany that I don't really want to have any enemies. Basically a peaceful arc I'm embarking on for the better. Lately, I was pretty sad that people just genuinely want to hurt me over fiction, was just pretty wild by any means necessary. And also disappointed, at least in myself, for being a reactionary participant in the toxicity to at least a degree, regardless if I'm justified or not, because those people don't really matter, especially since they're just set in their ways, right? I made sure to, change the thumbnails, of the quote addressing videos, because the last ones were pretty mean. I'll have to admit, they're pretty mean. But the main thing I do want to say in regards to the GR fans and the hate they expel is that, at least genuinely, I forgive them. And can only somewhat understand why they do the things they do, and even though most of it is just wrong and petty in my opinion, at the end of the day, I'm not mad at those people really anymore. I literally just feel nothing. Okay, it's whatever basically. And so yeah, I'm probably just gonna avoid contact with those people pretty much. So, oh yeah, and of course I'm also sorry for any of my behaviors that someone would view as toxic, and which is why I'm not really gonna interact with the comments again really, and anything that shouldn't be worth my time, right? And even though the GR arc is still, it's just over, right? I'll still be making, GR videos, right? So that's obviously something to look forward to. Last thing I would like to, say is that just because someone has, an opinion on a topic with, evidence, no one should, label it as, clickbait, misinformation, or even, something more extreme, propaganda. Just because you disagree with it. Come on, it's just very, very immature and, dishonest, in my opinion. I'll probably have a video getting a little bit more into that with my boy Lumo Staremax. Anyways, that's all I got for y'all. Just all I want is peace. I don't no one really has to fight over fiction. It's pretty stupid to fight over GER. Come on, if you just disagree, just well, agree to disagree at that point, and don't take things to some crazy extreme. Anyways, let's just all be better, please. And that's pretty much all I got for y'all. Peace out.
What's wrong?
I failed. I failed to save someone again.
Man is born a mortal being and we all make mistakes. It's part of the game. Just be more careful the next time.
It's hard for me to accept making mistakes like this.
Then, you can choose to suffer. That's also a part of the experience of mortal life.
Oh yeah, mortal.
Captain Forrest here on Godot's channel. Just wanted to give my 2 cents and my experiences dealing with the toxic fan base in JoJo's in the JoJo community, specifically the Gold Experience Requiem stands, of course. Now, dating back a few years ago, I made a video. It was Joker versus Jurino. That matchup is very one-sided. Joker completely body slams Jurino. That's another point in its own right. But I made that video and I got a lot of negative feedback from the fan base. It was mainly from Gold Experience Requiem stands. Now, going back then, a couple years ago or so, people were making the same mistake, the misconception, and not understanding the context of the stand stats, where it says none. People thought that meant to, dimensional tiering, dimensional power. It was just obviously the author of JoJo who made these stand profiles and the descriptions. He didn't do a very good job portraying the context behind the stand stats. And because of that, a lot of people kind of just ran with it and, made a bunch of dubious arguments. We had a point in time where people had GER multi-plus. There was a guy who attacked me in my comment section saying, Jurino's high out of Versal. A lot of disingenuous arguments that just kind of deterred me from the community, like the statement in part 6 from JoJolion, where JoJolion is talking about her stand, and because she said the word concept, people completely misconstrued what she was saying and tried to make it as if she was talking about platonic concepts, which she was not. She was just talking about the general three-dimensional aspect and idea of how her stand works. She was not talking about abstract beings or conceptual, platonic things in nature, nothing of that sort. And I saw it a lot in Discord and especially in comment sections as well. The misconception as well with, God Experience Requiem's, return to zero. People said, oh, it's passive, and it's not passive at all. Like, in that sense, like, yes, it activates. Like, if you're not fast enough to get past God Experience Requiem before what you do, then you get reset. But if it was passive, everyone would have constantly kept being resetted. Mister wouldn't be able to get his bullet off. Diavolo wouldn't even be able to move at all. He wouldn't even be able to get close to, Durano and even donut him. It just didn't make any sense. I even had issues back then with it. But yes, I had a lot of nasty comments. I've been begin, nasty threats. People in my comment section being very toxic. I had people making alt accounts coming after me. Like, that's how, terminally online a lot of the people in the community were behaving, and it actually just made me stop scaling JoJo. That's why I do no JoJo content on my channel anymore. I think the last video I did was probably like a year or so ago now, was Gold Experience Requiem versus Golden Freezer equal stats. That was a lot of fun. But after that, after the nasty experience I got, because I had to take the community tab down because it was just way too toxic. Again, just people and their disparaging comments, not doing the community a favor, not doing the verse a favor. It's like, whenever you think of JoJo now, it's like people aren't thinking about JoJo when it was first released. Like, the GOAT part is like part 1, part 2, and part 3. Whenever you talk about JoJo, there's just a nasty stigma. Everyone automatically thinks of part 5. I think part 5 is what damaged the reputation of JoJo and people's, take on the verse. I think it's hurt its reputation. That's why people have a negative stigma on, like, JoJo power scaling. It's like, when it comes to other people in, like, the JoJo community, when it comes to power scaling, like, Godot, hands down, has to be one of the most knowledgeable, the most credible source when it comes to, like, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. He's one of the most trusted guys, easily. I trust him over a lot of other JoJo power scalers, because a lot of them make the same mistake, and a lot of people are just generally blatantly dishonest. But that's just my quick take on this. I've had my fair share of bad moments with the people in the community. Me and Jobber, we've actually spoke about it before. We've talked about, just silly stands in the community. And yeah, that's just the reason why I didn't want to make content anymore in terms of anything JoJo related, just due to its stigma and the astronomical, ridiculous, and, nonsensical comments I'd get from people. And it kind of just, alienated me in a way.
All right, so the first thing I want to start with is definitely the subreddit. If you guys haven't seen it yet, I hope Jobber will link it somewhere. But I love how on Jobber's and Kosu's, on both of their debunks, everyone was so nice in the comments, or at least, most people. Then the second the subreddit comes up, suddenly those two are the worst scalers to ever exist. Everyone's saying it's clickbait, it's terrible. I found that more funny than anything, because everyone who was debating them even sucked. It was terrible arguments. Like, people who were saying that it literally says King Crimson erases time. I love how Jobber at the beginning of his King Crimson skill literally said he does erase time, just not literal time. They didn't even watch the videos and started putting comments and stuff on it. It was hilarious. Like, this is a hot take, but I really think GER fans are worse than Goku fans. Like, GER fans make up information that simply isn't believable to begin with. Like, they'll say that he's omnipresent, that he's immortal. They bring up the immeasurable stat argument, which is just the stupidest thing known to man, honestly. And it's ridiculous. And I mean, I mainly can't stand that they act like they know literally everything about JoJo when they're giving out the most false information possible. It's hilarious. The second you try to debate them, like they'll disagree with your argument, even if it's true, just so they can continue bringing up that argument in the future. It's hilarious. I feel like the reason why GER fans tend to be so, like, insulted by any type of debunk towards him is because Jorno has always had the excuse of not having, screen time. So, not much screen time or description on his stand. So, the JoJo community loves using him as, that character from JoJo that can solo you because, Return to Zero is broken. It doesn't even have screen time, so it's not everything he can do. Every Jorno fan's excuse, but I feel like that's the only reason why they're so passionate. The overall point that I'm trying to make is that GER fans, if you try to do anything involving debating them, you try giving them a logical explanation, feats, evidence, data books, it does nothing. All they will do is sit there and call you a clown, incorrect, bring up Return to Zero, say stats are immeasurable. It's just irritating. They're easily the worst fan base in JoJo. Like, if you were to ask, like, the people that don't like the JoJo fan base why, I could almost guarantee that 95% of the time it's going to be because of GER fans. Like, the things they come up with are honestly jaw-droppingly bad because it never makes sense. It never makes sense to begin with. There's never any evidence to back it up, and it's just overall ridiculous. Like, yeah, that's basically my entire take on the GER fans. It's crazy.
The JoJo community, from my general experience, is alright, but if you have an opinion which generally goes against what people usually or generally accept, you're gonna get fucking bombarded. And it's honestly quite sad because versus debating is subjective. There's, where you draw the line for outliers, high ends, low ends for calcs, etc., etc. There's a whole, there's a full list of stuff that proves that. So having a different opinion on if GER is or isn't the strongest character in fiction is not the end of the world. Like, you don't have to even respond to something if you disagree with it. Like, if something on the internet makes you angry, you don't have to go out of your way to say that it made you angry. You can just move on with your day, much less go out your way to dox people and actively send them death threats as well, which has happened, which is quite sad because, it's an opinion over a fictional character from a fictional series talking about how strong they might be. Yeah, some of you need to chill out.
My experience with toxic JER fans is they'll take that to their grave. They'll continue arguing forever, and basically steal man all their points just to get it across.
When I first saw Golden Experience Requiem, I kind of also overhyped him, but then after a few days, I kind of calmed down and realized, okay, yeah, I overhyped him. That was my initial reaction. But with the fans, I haven't interacted with any directly, but just looking in some comments on some posts and videos, I have seen them just invent the most ridiculous made up stuff ever just to try to defend Golden Experience Requiem's status. That would be that's just plain lying, which obviously is not healthy for a community.
So my take on GER fans and toxicity in the JoJo power scaling community, I guess this is what Jobber wants. My personal experience with it has always been very little. I don't really interact with those people at all because Vinland Saga is the best way I would describe it. I don't really like to argue in the comment section because it's just useless and nobody ever actually is right at the end of the day, because I'm going to guarantee you nobody actually changes their opinion after said argument. But when it comes to just the bias and the overall idea that GERs are strongest, it's a thing that's lasted almost nearly 20 years now when it comes to that part. And what was originally said during it with GR claiming of itself to be the strongest strongest. It's just kind of stuck around for some reason. That could be up to a lot of factors. The Requiem idea behind it's really cool. Like a power-up is like really very shonen in nature, and I think maybe a lot of JoJo fans just treat it as very special. Could be the case. Another case would be just, I don't know, it looks cool, and people just like, for those reasons, it's the strongest. Like, I don't know. It's really up to that kind of ideas of why people just get so biased for GER. Maybe because it just has that like senior authority when it came to so many like ideas of what the strongest is. Like, people just still hold on to that, even though nowadays through modern JoJo texts and updated JoJo texts, it might not actually be the case. And even then, there's still the argument of then where does it go if it's not the strongest anymore? And even now with this video, Jobber and me have differing opinions, at least when we've talked in private. He thinks it's like number 6, which is wild, at least to me. But to me, it's like 3rd or something at this point, as while at least feats wise, it barely has anything, but like narrative wise, it's probably one of the strongest ones. But of course, that's how we're talking about it now. Back in the day, and with a lot of people, they just have this really blatant dumb idea that it's just the strongest because it says it's the strongest, even though there's very little to back that up, in all honesty. Overall, my experience with those type of fans has been very limited, but that's because of my own choices. But I have seen it just get really bad in other people's cases. But it's just a goofy little manga, guys. Why are you guys getting so angry? Goddamn.
While I'm hesitant to make sweeping generalizations, the one thing I really dislike about rabid GER fans is that they act as if though there is no discussion to be had about GER. They act as if though any debate on the topic is unnecessary because it is a done topic. It is a solved topic. And that sort of attitude where someone is above discussion really quite irks me. It's a pretty common attitude as well, which is the worst part about it.
This is for a video Godot is making on JoJo. I will not be making any arguments in particular regarding the GER controversy, because I feel like that's been covered by Kosu, Jobber, and Kratos. I haven't met Kosu, but I've met Kratos a long time ago when I was hot garbage at debating fiction, and he was pretty cool. I still think he's a cool guy, so go check him out. But let me give my opinion on JoJo. JoJo is a series that tells 9 stories, with the 8th being the latest complete story, and the 9th part being the concurrent story that just began some time ago. Each of the villains and each of the protagonists have a set of powers and abilities that relate to their parts in the series. In part 1, the story is Dio versus Jonathan. Dio is hungry for power. And there's the question of whether or not humanity messed him up or whether or not he was already messed up. Jonathan was meant to be the foil to Dio. He learned an ability called Hamon, and Dio became a vampire to shed his humanity because it's revealed that he was a monster all along. Part 1 is about the reconciliation of Johnny and Dio's differences, and that eventually it's realized that one of them will have to go to the top and the other will have to die. Part 2, Araki gets a little more bold, and he uses a protagonist that goes up against these really insane, broken, busted characters called the Pillarmen, and he has to beat them in order to free himself from the challenge he posed to the Pillarmen. 2 challenges, because AC/DC wanted to entertain it as well. Part 3, it's Jotaro versus Dio. Dio wants to go beyond what a mere vampire is, and he wants to control the world fully, the entire universe. He wants to realize heaven, if you've read part 6. Part 4, it's a mix of Kira and the Red Hot Chili Peppers stand user, who are the 2 main characters you'll hear about. There's also Kira's father, but it's been a while since I've read part 4. But part 4 is about a peaceful town, and the town that Josuke lives in is pretty normal, right? Josuke wants to protect people and he's selfless. That's what his stand power represents. The fact that he's willing to get up and fight another battle to live another day. That's the whole point of Josuke's stand. It's a metaphor for that. Kira represents someone who Josuke would completely detest, who would murder people for the sake of fulfilling their infatuation with body parts of people. Needless to say, that would not sit well with him. And so the war between him and Kira has begun. And Jotaro, who came to the town, has been looking for dangerous stand users while he's in the town, more than just what is revealed on the first episode of Part 4, or the first or couple chapters of Part 4 in the manga. Part 5, Giorno, who will finally arrive to at this point, is a character who represents the metaphor of he doesn't want the cycle of children being given drugs to continue. And so at the end of this series, when he's fighting Diavolo in order to become the leader of the Mafia, he gains an ability called causality manipulation, goal experience, Requiem. The whole point of the ability is attacks that are violent attacks, specifically attacks, not utility moves, but attacks being thrown at him, can be reversed. It's to represent the ending of the cycle. That's what goal experience Requiem is. It's that you'll never arrive at infinity, because he'll always prevent you from arriving to the truth. With Part 6, Pucci just realizes Dio's dream, which is heaven. Part 7, it's about Jonathan trying to get his legs back and his fiery determination, and it's Funny Valentine trying to get the Holy Corpse and make America great again, political memes aside. And then you have Part 8, which is representing Josuke's inner conflict, which is equivalent exchange. And everything that goes on in Part 8 is a consequence of the two people who became Josuke. When Josuke fights Wonder Review, and he gets that really busted ability that lets him get around Wonder Review, which is Go Beyond. It's representing that he's found a way around the calamity of himself, in a way of speaking. It's also a metaphor for that. But here's the whole point. Why do people not like Goal Experience Requiem? It's because every bad argument you can come up with in JoJo, the possibility stuff, the alternate universe stuff, you name it, you can probably make it with GER. That's the most important reason why Godot does not like GER. He doesn't like possibility spricking, but he doesn't like GER even more because you can argue possibility nonsense with GER. So, I don't know what else I could add to the equation other than JoJo's a neat series. I don't know how you go from people like Diavolo being just, town city destroyers to like all of a sudden he can wreck the universe and like the multiverse and blah blah blah. See, the problem is with GER is you have to bite the bullet and say Diablo can destroy the universe, or you have to somehow prove GER skills to that he somehow scales to Tusk Act 4 and Funny Valentine and this, that, and the other. And it's a really hard claim to prove because you really can't make it in the first place. Anyway, that's all I had to say.